Google, and I'll just give you a glimpse of our latest device, which you might be able to see if you check it out there. That device is called Norman, after Norman Rostocker, who was the chief scientist who devised this approach to nuclear fusion. And nuclear fusion, as pretty much every scientist in the world knows, is the way that we will be getting our electricity once we move off of fossil fuels.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in live for ScotWeek. We are very, very excited about this panel. It's on sustainability and what you can do to be a better human in terms of sustainability. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce, we have Harry Hamlin, Charlie Stuart Gay, and Jeff Garner. And Jeff is also on our board for ScotWeek. So thank you all for joining us today. So let's get started. Harry, let's start with you. What makes TAE Technologies unique in bringing clean and non-radioactive fusion power to the world?
Okay, well, let me start at the beginning. This company that I started in 1998, pretty much single-handedly. I had an idea that some scientists in UC Irvine might be able to, with a lot of help, pull off non-radioactive nuclear fusion, which is, as most people know, the silver bullet, the holy grail for electricity production for the next 100,000 years on the planet. And so after 23 years of R&D and raising $1 billion, we now have the former head of General Electric helping to run the company, along with the former Secretary of Energy, Ernie Moniz, helping to run the company. And we've raised so much money and become partners with Google. And I'll just give you a glimpse of our latest device, which you might be able to see if you check it out there. That device is called Norman, after Norman Rostocker, who was the chief scientist who devised this approach to nuclear fusion. And nuclear fusion, as pretty much every scientist in the world knows, is the way that we will be getting our electricity once we move off of fossil fuels. Of course, renewables are great, but renewables will never be able to actually satisfy all of the electricity requirements the huge industrial complex will require. So we need to have another alternative source, and as far as I'm concerned, this is it. So that's what we're trying to do. We've gotten really far. We hope to be commercial within the next 7 years and be supplying power within the next 7 years. Completely non-radioactive, non-toxic, produces absolutely no bad boogie. The only thing it produces is helium nuclei. It can't blow up, can't melt down, is absolutely safe, and you can put it next to a nursery school.
Wow, that's incredible. And I encourage everyone to check out all of Harry, Charlie, and Jeff's speaker profiles. The websites are down there. So if you're interested in learning more, please go check it out. Jeff, let's go to you. So you are the owner of Prophetik and Wolf and Rose. So tell us about what you're doing to provide sustainable fashion and clothes.
Yeah, so hey guys, I started the journey about 18 years ago. And so we've been in development of textiles and plant-based dyes for that long, actually. So we're trying to bring it to a commercial level, and I started Wolf and Rose and the Prophetik Intimates thing last year to basically allow people to touch and feel and wear it every day, because obviously the closest thing to our bodies is our intimates. So we can all start there. And, I believe that everything we put on our bodies goes into our bodies, so therefore has a health implication. So that's been my journey and sustainability. So obviously we show around the world, do catwalks and dress fun people for the red carpet, etc. But that's the heart of it. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I have personally worn some of your gowns and your underwear, your intimates, and it is so beautiful, so amazing. You can breathe and move them in, but also feel elegant and sexy at the same time. So 100%. Go check out Jeff's clothes. And Charlie, I've also experienced your amazing food. And I hope to go to Tulum and visit Sonara. So Charlie, tell us about, you have the Influence Foundation, Sonara, and the Real Coconut. So tell us about that and sustainable food and how they all come together.
The bottom line for us is that we think everything's going to come down to food and water. I think what Harry's doing is essential, because obviously we need the energy. But we feel that by 2050, we all believe there's 10 billion people on the planet, unless a virus wipes some of us off it. And unless we understand how to feed 10 billion people, there's going to be a massive hunger. And water rights is becoming more and more of an issue. So the real coconut is only involved with crops that don't require irrigated water. We don't deal with things like almonds that may take 10 gallons of water. We deal with coconut, hemp, yucca, plantain. We have a greenhouse in Holland making algae, because 50 to 85% of our every breath that we're taking in this moment comes from the ocean. And we're not correlating our issue with plastic. So my background was as a promoter and built the London Arena in the Docklands, was with Pink Floyd, Cher brought me to the States. So I was really good at always activating interest. And our interest is around, how do we nourish ourselves, nurture our world, and feed 10 billion people, probably by the time I pass. But that's what we're about. Sonara's unbelievably blessed with our hotels, because our hotels bring incredible people into the environment of what we're about. We hold the container. We call it a conscious curative container. And everyone on this call and everyone listening has irrevocable skills and talents. So we've all got to come together, get connected, and figure out how to heal our planet and support our planet. And if we don't, the planet will burp us off and it will heal itself.
No doubt that will happen. The planet's going to be fine no matter what. But just incidentally, the Electric Power Research Institute did a study of tri-alpha, or TAE, and one of the main ways that we will be contributing to this effort in the future is to desalinate water from the ocean. So we'll be able to provide desalinated water on a huge scale going forward.
And you look, Harry, at like Kern County, everyone knows about the almonds in Mid-Valley of California and how the water was moved to there. And it's taking 10 gallons of water to make one almond nut in the one place that almonds should never have been produced in the world because of the issues of water there. But it's close to the ocean. So if we are able to do that, you could change the way farming is in places that people see as a huge problem.
Well, definitely, we hope to do it in North Africa, well, all through the African continent.
Africa. I was executive director of Mandela's last nonprofit to do with landmines. And when Princess Diana died, landmine removal was $1,000 to remove any landmine. People would say it was a never-ending problem because there was 70 million landmines. Mandela was teaching a few people about destiny and legacy towards the end of his life, rather than just using their skills to make money. And within a few months, the cost of landmines came down from $1,000 to $8, from 1,000 to 8, because of technologies of being able to detect where the mines were and where they weren't. And right now, the Chinese, God bless all the Chinese, they own a lot of the water aquifers in Africa, and they're criminalizing how farmers are able to get their own water. So all of these things are coming to a head.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about water. Jeff, how do you use water in your designs? Because I know that you hand dye a lot of your materials with plant matter. So tell us about water in your work.
Sure, absolutely. So obviously the water process is very, the gallons, depending on what you're dyeing. But, with denim, everyone's heard the numbers there. So they talk about 1,500 gallons per jean, right? So what you got to look at is that, I've been to Xinjiang, China, and over there where they do manufacturing for all the denim. And what happens is, thinking about it like a recipe. So if you're baking, right, you start at the beginning of a recipe, and then once you finish baking, you kind of throw away the rest of the ingredients typically. So what they could do as they're dyeing, so when you have a dye vat of indigo, let's say, you dip your jean into it, you lift it out, it takes some of the dye extracts out of it. Well, after a certain point, it doesn't dye hard enough, the color doesn't hold enough. So they typically dump out the dye with the water, and then they just do the recipe again, right? So the idea is simply they could recharge the dye vats, basically, where you have to take measurements, figure out what's needed to rebalance out your dye vat. And obviously that takes somebody of education to be able to figure that out. And secondly, it takes time and expense. So that's why you're looking at these larger manufacturers and why they just simply dump their dyes in like the Pearl River in China, for example. And so you see every time Gap dyes a pair of denim, you see that river flowing with that color they choose. So obviously it takes policy to come into effect to protect those water streams and or to create, where they have to recycle and reclaim the water, which hopefully more and more people will start doing. So anyways, that's why I do the plant-based dyes, because I could have my indigo dye vat forever and never have to dump it. I just keep recharging it and keep it covered, and I use it forever.
Wow, that's really amazing. Do you teach classes? I want to learn how to do this.
I do. I've done a few universities and whatnot. So yeah, it's very interesting when obviously the hands-on approach is the best, because as we all know, out of sight, out of mind. So you bring it to that younger generation, they're hand doing this, something our grandparents knew about. It just brings it into light and fruition. So it makes them think twice about things. So it's great.
Wow, that's amazing. So, going through this journey, I know I keep having awakenings of like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. I didn't realize that it's harming myself and or the earth. So let's talk about ways that we can nurture ourselves while also living sustainable ways that are symbiotic with the earth. And I know each of you have your own specific career fields that you're going into this, but what are some practical ways that we can really apply, and what are some things that you've learned in the last few years in all of that? Charlie, you want to start?
In food, I think it's pretty basic. You feel how you eat, and for every generations they could have eaten some great gluten, for instance, but gluten today is very hybridized, especially in the States, with all the seeds, etc. You eat a bread roll in the Provence or in Italy, and it can taste great. So we're really clear about what we eat. And when I met my wife, I used to snore, and I used to go to the fridge to get chocolate after I clean my toothpaste, because I clean my teeth. My wife was more in hospital than she was at school, at Daniela, and she learned how to breathe from about the age of 22, doing the exact opposite to what the world said, which is she became a dive instructor in Sinai, and she went underwater. So for 23 years, what she ate was how she felt, and she went gluten and dairy free. And I grew up with a lot of allergies in England, and had sinus issues. Now I don't have them. Now I don't snore, and so if we're able to nourish ourselves with food that supports small farmers all over the world, own their own land, indigenous owning their own crops, and those crops then are in demand, so they suddenly in Africa have to produce more than 1 ton per hectare, and we're getting the plantain and the yucca and the coconut. Clearly it's going to nurture the world. And in the old days it was about survival of the fittest, winner takes all, and it was about the love of power, dueling with the power of love, which was a gentle whisper from the beginning of time. And the love of power separated us all in color and creed and dogma and gender and geography, and Hadrian's Wall and Scotland, and James coming down to Hampton Court and recreating a Bible, and we were all separated, but now we're not, because we have far less judgments than our forefathers. And so going back to that point before, as we nurture ourselves and understand caring, of really giving and receiving care. We were really good at, each of us, at giving to others. Now we're beginning to understand how to receive, being better humans, and then supporting the world to be the best it can be, without an attachment or expectation. And so shifting from the love of power truly into the irrevocable skills and talents that each of us have, connecting them, and mystery and magic shows up, and 1 + 1 multiplies to an infinite. Well,
That's great. Harry, what would you like to say about that?
Well, of course, I agree with everything that Charlie said. And in terms of what I'm Scottish, so I'm very cheap, because being Scottish, we won't pay a penny more for anything, and we might not. So my whole place here now is we're all, well, going back to my American roots. I'm off the grid here, so I have a complete power plant, solar power plant on premise here, and then Tesla power walls, batteries that store all the power. So it's essentially off the grid. And then last year I decided to become a farmer and created, well, this is my hydroponic situation that's going on. I don't know if you can see that or not. These are called lettuce grow pods. And
it's amazing.
all of the greens, even legumes that I need, and much more than I need hydroponically there. But I also have dedicated an old swimming pool that was on the property that was built by James Roosevelt in 1929. Hasn't been used in about 30 or 40 years, but I filled it up with dirt and I made it into a garden. And now I'm growing broccoli there, Brussels sprouts, corn, garlic, spinach, you name it, it's all there. So essentially, and it's all organic. So what we're eating here is what I grow on the property. I don't have any livestock here though. But then again, there's a lot of us in our family are plant-based diet only. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. Jeff, tell us about some other ways that you're incorporating sustainability into your life.
Sure. Just to start with the food thing, I've been eating acai bowls for like 14 years. That's all I eat every day, all day. Charlie makes fun of me, but it is part of the plant-based diet. So I'm a big advocate along with the Camerons. And I believe in that. I believe it's your energy cycle. And I learned about it in Brazil when I was paddling out surfing, and these guys would eat it and paddle past me and surf for hours past me. And I was like, what is this? So I just started doing it. So everyone thinks I'm a vampire now because I look younger than I am. But I believe, it's called, in my viewpoint, is bioaccumulation. So as Charlie was saying, it's all about synergy of effects. So what we eat, what we put on our bodies, what we, take in our environment, like our cleaning products, even down to, what our car seats are made of, and that off-gassing that happens when our car heats up, right? So there's people been found with lung cancer that when it off-gasses formaldehyde from the car seats, right? And they open the car and it just goes straight into their lungs. Well, so in my viewpoint, we just, in sustainability, we need to look at all those aspects as a lifestyle choice. And, at one time, our cup's going to overflow. And that's the bioaccumulation level, right? So you cannot sit there and pinpoint saying because you eat non-organically, you're going to get X in 10 years, whatever. Or if you wear this synthetic dyed polyester shirt, or nylon, hate nylon. Anyways, that would like, add up. So, with, for example, for bras and breast cancer and all that. So there is linkage to all that. And, even to Harry's point of what's in the water, like, the chlorine, et cetera, and the elements they use to clean the water. If you're, I'm on well water here. So I have 5 natural springs at my property in Tennessee. So I'm a hybrid. I'm like Tennessean, English, and Scottish all mixed together. So, but yeah, I firmly believe it's how you make these choices, better choices, and learn about everything in which you put on your body, into your body, and around your body, and just get that education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we'd had a conversation about nylon, and that was like the mic drop for me. So could you just really quickly tell us about why nylon is like, ugh.
Well, you got to look back. Obviously, I love history. So you look back, nylon was created during the war, right? My grandfather, Harry would like this. So my grandfather was the main scientist in the Manhattan Project in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So he actually was working on a peace water project with Kennedy on how to desalinate salt water. Back then, Kennedy thought the next war was going to be fought on water. All that to say is that I have that scientific background mind. So you can imagine during the war, they had silk for the parachutes and they ran out of silk. So therefore they developed nylon for that very purpose. Well, what happened was they started using, nylon for like leggings. So the women are like, ooh, look, they don't tear as quickly and they're cheaper. And so we started putting this, chemically made up laboratory, non-tested fabrication on our bodies and never study this energy of effect. What happens when you put this on your body and the lymphatic system and all this stuff? So you can imagine all these chemicals going into your bloodstream, and and then our bodies weren't made ever to be clothed. We were designed to be nude and naked. So so that's where it causes problems, because we put things inside your body through your mouth. Obviously you have kidneys, etc., that are designed to filtrate that. So anyway, so that's simply kind of what happens. So yeah, obviously I'm not a nylon fan, because I even make my own silk board shorts for surfing, because I don't want to sit out in the sun and the UV rays hit, and then I'm off gassing carbon monoxide because of nylon's a petroleum based product, etc. So without getting too heavy into it, yeah, you want to stay away from the nylon.
Well, plus it makes you feel horrible when you're wearing it. I can't wear it. If I put a nylon shirt on, I know it's nylon. I got to take it off within seconds, or my body gets the heebie-jeebies completely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I know Charlie's wearing Jeff's shirts. Yeah,
I'm wearing one of Jeff's hemp shirts. Lucky enough, it was my birthday on Thursday, and he gave me a couple of polo shirts. It's absolutely fantastic. And I wear his hemp shorts, his hemp boxers as well. Yeah, let's go back to the underwear thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Harry, I know we're kind of bouncing around about, but I am not a science person at all. Like, that is not how my brain functions. But I know when I first met you and you were talking about TAE, can you just briefly explain to our audience members the difference between fusion, fission, cold fusion, all this stuff, and what makes TAE different in that whole entire linear sequence?
Well, the sun is a fusion device, and it is a fusion device because it takes millions of years for hydrogen atoms to be drawn together by gravity out in space and create these giant balls of hydrogen. And the pressure at the very center of the core of these balls of hydrogen that are hundreds of thousands or sometimes millions of miles across in diameter, the pressure is so great that it causes the protons, the positively protons, to fuse together. If you've ever taken a magnet and you've tried to put the two positive poles together, you can't do it because of something called a Coulomb barrier. The positively charged particles can't go together. But there's so much pressure at the center of the sun that they're able to fuse, and it causes this thing called fusion, which is when protons collide, fuse, and release 3 alpha particles or charged helium nuclei. That's different from fission, which is when you split an atom, and that's what an atomic bomb uses fission. That's when they split an atom, and it creates a lot of energy, byproduct energy, heat, in the form of heat when they boil water and run a turbine. In the case of what we're doing with our fusion device, we will be creating charged alpha particles, but we will be harvesting them directly using what's called an inverse cyclotron, so that we hopefully won't have to boil water to run a turbine. It'll be much more elegant that way than using a steam cycle. But cold fusion is something that a couple of guys came up with, Fleischman and Pons out of Utah back in the 80s. And everybody went crazy, and they thought, oh my God, one glass of water is going to be able to run a city forever. And it turned out that they kind of didn't have that right. And so cold fusion is not what we're doing. We are doing hot fusion, or what is called thermonuclear fusion. But this particular kind of fusion is absolutely safe. Unlike a hydrogen bomb, which uses a kind of fusion as well, which is you make a hydrogen bomb blow up by having 2 atom bombs next to it blow up at the same time, and then it creates a kind of fusion explosion. This can never do that. If there was an earthquake underneath the device that I showed you, it would just stop. That's all. There's absolutely no way anything bad boogie can come out of this device. All it can do is produce electricity. So that's the good news about it. That's why it's different. And it's different from what's being done by our government with a thing called tokamak, which uses radioactive fuels, deuterium and tritium, which are heavy hydrogen. We don't use that. We use boron 11 and hydrogen, which are completely non-radioactive as our fuels. So that's why we are differentiated from the other fusion devices.
Harry, is it in the field now? Is it actually, can we be using it, or?
Well, we're still we're in the late stages of R&D, but we have just, Science Magazine just published an article this week on it. We've just crossed a milestone that basically proves our principle, and according to the Nobel laureates who are on our science panel, we're good to go. All we need is, we need another $1 billion to take it through, and we think we have that. We've already raised $1 billion, and we think we have the billion to go all the way.
Are you connected into Tesla, or you just use Tesla at home?
I the cars, and Elon knows all about what we're doing at Triathlon. But no, I mean, he did say at one point that if he wasn't so involved with SpaceX and Tesla, that he would be working on fusion. He's a little bit.
His brother Kimball is really good friends. They got engaged at one of our hotels. We've got a Tesla opposite a real coconut kitchen now. But let's go and find the $1 billion.
I think we found it. I think.
Okay, good job. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Awesome, very cool. And we have a question come in really quick. It's while we're on you, Harry. Question is from Kenneth Mitch, who is also on the ScotWeek board. Hi, Ken. Mr. Hamlin, how long have you been interested in fusion, and what has been your inspiration?
I was first introduced to this concept in 1980 when I lived in Rome, and with Ursula Andress, who's Swiss. And we were invited to a cocktail party at the Swiss consulate in Rome in 1980. And a guy came up to me out of the blue and said, "I am a Serbian physicist. I've got a great idea to change the world." And it basically introduced me to the concept. And then over the years, I became a sort of spokesman for his science. And then in 1998, I was tasked in the head of a panel. I was tasked with finding funding for the science, and I couldn't find funding for the science. There was no appetite for this at all anywhere in the world among politicians or banks. And so I said, well, then I got to start a company. We've got to start our own company and see if we can bootstrap this using friends and family and get the experiments going. And then Paul Allen came in a couple of years later with the first big money. And then since then we've had venture capitalists from all over the world come in, and we've raised just under $1 billion so far.
Amazing.
Great. Awesome. So Charlie, you previously mentioned that we are in a period of chaotic emergence to authentic expression. So what does this mean in terms of caring for our planet?
I touched on that a little bit before. We were always separated, living sort of in the comfort zones of life, and we were sort of told how to do that. Obviously, I mean, I'm a Stuart. Just going back to the, and I grew up with my little kilt on and my Stuart rug on, my prep schools, and so I was always rebellious. But a rebel's much more interested in a question, like the guys on this panel, than settling on the answers. And God bless everyone that's able to have the conviction and the courage and the bravery to step out of the comfort zone and move beyond that. So I'm seeing that our world now is in this period of chaotic emergence. And a lot of people would find that frightening and painful. And yet I see an inevitability that it's happening despite of us as much as because of us. Mandela was in prison for 27 years. Black man walked into White House. I funded the first women's empowerment college in Liberia for the first ever female president in Africa, when the women marched in the streets and said no sex. 150 years after emancipation, 200 years after a black tribe supported a black tribe to be put into slavery and be sold to a Portuguese guy. So we've all bought into history thinking we knew what history was, and her story was obliterated. Now our forefathers aren't around. They had those judgments to survive, and we're connected in ways that we've never been connected. And so that truth is coming through, and it's causing pain. The friction is happening. And at this absolute critical moment for the planet. There's nothing more expensive I've learned in my life than ignorance. There is nothing more expensive than ignorance. And we have the choices, and the choices for our time have been, God, get us out of it. We've repeated the pattern because we haven't dealt with the issue. The second would be, I could ignore it. I could be highly disrespectful to you, Kelsey, or to myself. The third is a painful one. It's to look at it and to move forward with compassion and then in a clarity. And that's where we are. And so authentic expression is coming through. It's funny that COVID has, well, it's not funny at all, but COVID for so many, but it has brought a lot of people into their heart-centeredness and to question, the former ways. Some of us were individuals and we were doing that. Now it's a bit like the third trilogy of Lord of the Rings. It's a bit like we're all jumping out of the ship with our shields. We've all been given these different colors and sizes and shapes and skills. Some of us incredibly strong, some of us not. And yet we're all in this together. And the duality of the love of power is inevitable with the power of love. And that's why this authentic expression is coming through. The old will hold on, it will be painful, and the new will come through. Love and light always conquers fear and darkness. Despots never survive throughout the history of time. And, as long as we are in our collective and joining together, then the world's in a great place.
That's beautiful. Yes, I know. I saw Harry nodding his head, and Harry and Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, love and light, I can say, will always win out in the end. We're going to go through some sausage making before that happens, which we're going through right now. But there's actually really only one thing in the universe, and that is love. And all the other stuff is fear. And ultimately, love will win out over fear. That is at least my firm belief.
I'll speak to the positive and negative Charlie was describing. So in our polyester spandex boxers, we also have positive and negative friction, like whenever you're a kid running across the carpet and you shock your sister or your brother. That's what's happening with your synthetic boxers. So therefore it has a negative effect. There's a lot of problems with, issues down there, etc. So anyways, all that to say, it's all synergetic, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think we're going to continue coming back to this theme of interconnectedness, of yin and yang, positive, negative, light and dark, of really transforming. And okay, where do we see our world going, and what do we want? Or not necessarily what we want, but what is good for all and what is good for the planet. So I'm going to switch gears slightly, because I know Harry and Charlie are both Stuarts, and Jeff has a lot of Scottish ancestry, and we got to view his Scottish fashion show for yesterday, his Mary Queen of Scots fashion show. So let's start with Jeff, actually. So tell us about your Scottish ancestry, and then secondly, how has going to Scotland and really tapping into your Scottish roots influenced how you view sustainability?
Sure. Basically, it started, I used to do an event called Dress to Kilt in New York, and it was for the Windu Warriors Project. So that's where I began and got introduced to a lot of the guys doing positive things, from Scottish heritage in the United States. So I was asked by Historic Environment Scotland to do this catwalk 2 years ago. And basically, they took me into Scotland, showed me areas I've never been to before. And the beauty of it was learning about local textiles that are still in production there, with the lace. And, they have one factory that used to make all the movie screens out of the cotton, et cetera. So it's beautiful. So we took basically those fabrications, turned it into a collection called, Women of the Crown. It was mostly about, Mary Queen of Scots, but also Anne of Denmark and Elizabeth, and these powerful women figures of the time, because either the kings were dead or they were young. And anyways, it was interesting historically in the sense of fashion, etc. They used to send around little dolls to each other to show how they should dress for court. You had the Medici, Catherine de Medici in the French court, and she would kind of dictate what everyone should wear. And the idea was to kind of direct people in that way so they would gain respect. And she developed the corset, and obviously that's not a positive, but it's interesting historically. So we had the first ever show at Edinburgh Castle, which was gorgeous, and had a live band and orchestra, and had a horse out front and a piper piping everyone in. It was just a beautiful moment. So the idea was to bring people to the idea of local textiles and what Scotland's still producing, and what you can make, and we made little cuffs out of the lace and had them in the retail store for the castle, etc. So how to also make it applicable to today's society as well. And so I think that's half the battle, is like how to take these old beautiful craftsmanship textiles and or production in Scotland and, create new avenues for it.
Yeah, that's great. And I've had a couple people ask where they can get your clothes. So Wolf and Rose, it's wolfxrose.com. And then how can people buy your dresses?
Or the gowns. Well, I do them mainly for the catwalks. So they're all couture, one of a kind, but I'm in Tennessee, Malibu, so I meet with people. But yeah, it's mainly to tell the story, because the idea is I want to expose more people to the idea and thinking and conversations of sustainable fashion, what's in their clothes and why. So that's why I'm really focused on that, versus I used to have a wearable collection and got into the fickle industry of fashion and realized very quickly that's not why I do this. All my business friends hate me. They're like, Jeff, you don't want to make money? It's like, no, I have no interest. I want to really get the heart of the matter out there and shift to make change. So anyways, that's what we're doing. But yeah, you can contact us directly, and if you're interested in the gowns.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Jeff, you're doing another fashion show in Scotland, aren't you? Or not?
Yes, I am. In September for London Fashion Week, I'm going to take it to Scotland and have a friend's castle south of Glasgow. So we're going to do it there. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Harry, how has your Scottish ancestry impacted your view on sustainability, or just in general?
Oh, I couldn't tell you exactly. I'm basically American, but when I was 13, we got in the car in London, drove up to Glasgow because we knew we were from Glasgow. We had an old family Bible that had the actual ancestral address of our family, and we got there, and it turned out to be Berlini prison. So I hailed from a prison in Glasgow. That's where we come from. So hopefully in some way we've maybe made up for that. Who knows?
Wow, very cool. And Charlie, tell us about your Stuart Scottish ancestry, and how has Scotland's and your kind of upbringing and those roots impacted your view on sustainability?
I went to university up in Aberdeen, which is the Granite City. I lasted like 4 months, I think, because I was my mum's family were all in horse racing. So I was on the racetrack down south and came down. But it did impact me to a degree a lot when I was a kid, because my passport says I was born in Hampton Court, and I was actually born at home in the only private residence in the court. So, and then mum, for some reason, was acquainted with the Queen, and she used to go to Buckingham Palace, and she used to tag me along with my sister when I was like 4 years old. And so I used to go into the palace, and I'm a Stuart, and the current royal family were not. So there was certain discussions around who should be king, and by a 4-year-old, and because I didn't know, and clearly I lost out. And then later on, I had to wake up to my last name being gay and going to Eton. So the whole thing was a little bit messy from the age of 4 through till 16, and that made me a massive rebel. The News of the World called me with a few friends, which is the biggest Sunday newspaper back in the day, called me an upper class aristocratic gate crashing punk, because they came out of Eton at the time of the Sex Pistols. And the whole thing was a mess, a complete mess. But now I've made more sense of it. I'm incredibly blessed to have had that as a motivation. And my children are called Arabella, who would have been maybe put on the throne if the gunpowder plot would have worked, and against James, who's my son. So clearly those names and that ancestry, and my third child, Sahana Stuart, you know, so it goes on. And I'm grateful, very grateful for it.
That's beautiful. So I know we only have a few minutes left. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what's next for you guys? What's your next big project, or what's the next milestone that you want to reach? And how can people get involved and support you guys and cheer you on, or else have money or buy your stuff? Yeah, Jeff, would you like to start?
Sure. You know, simply, I would love it if everyone started, doesn't have to be mine, but started wearing natural fabric, you know, intimates, and or change your bed sheets, because you off gas in that, you know, 6 to 8 hours a night. That's the next kind of big step in that journey of, you know, getting away from the toxins and clothing and fashion, etc. So easy things to do. And the second easy thing to do is just to change there's so many of my friends, I'm like, are you using Tide and Gain? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I can't be around you. I had to put my window down. But simply using like 7th generation products, something natural for your cleaning. It's so easy to change that, and affordable and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's what you can do for me and for the universe.
Very cool. And do you have a new collection that you're working on, or can we not talk about that?
Yeah, no, we can't. I'm working on another Scottish collection I'm going to show. So I'm using similar textiles and going a little bit deeper, and trying to use the elements over there they used to dye with. So I'm gonna, so that's the next thing. So yeah.
Very, very cool. Harry, what about you? What's next for you? What's going on?
Well, I'm actually going back to my day job next week. I'm going to Romania to do a show called Flowers in the Attic, the prequel. I just finished doing a show in Toronto called The Hot Zone. And so I'm kind of veering back now that TAE is being, all the COOs, CEOs, all those people are running it now. So I can step back and be the mascot for the thing that I created, and then get back to my day job. So I'm doing a one-man show right now too. Just finished the script yesterday. So I'll be in Delaware doing that in a month as a pilot project.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my goodness. And just real quick, in Delaware, are you doing that in a live theater with an audience?
We're doing it first in the parking lot in May, and we're going back in October to actually do it inside, you know, God willing, but it's going to be a parking lot experience in May.
Wow, it's amazing. Wow, very cool. Break a leg, Harry. And Charlie, what about you?
I just want everyone to continue to wake up and recognize what's around them. As far as I'm concerned, we've now got a foundation called Influence Foundation. I love the word if, because it's always one way or the other. So influencefoundation.co. A lot of people go there and tell us what their skills and talents are. And then it's like a giant jigsaw. If it fits to be able to put someone into a puzzle, then we're absolutely going to try to do that, because this is way bigger than any of us on this call, what we've been talking about. And so that's the main thing. We're putting, I've just joined a board of a hydroponics company, Harry, and everyone. Hydroponics is really interesting. Sebastian Sainsbury, which is a name the English would know as far as the Sainsbury's, started this company called Crate to Plate in London, and he's setting up, he's got containers that are making lettuces and herbs, and they're now shipping them into the stores in London. We're looking at putting hydroponics, we all are, I think. Harry brought that up. It's a huge solution for figuring out how to feed hungry people over the years in the future. And then we're creating a village, a new village in Belize. It's not a hotel, it's a whole village. And that used to be part of the Commonwealth. So it has an English titled system. I love Belize, incredible place, incredible farm. And so we're doing that. So that's what we're doing.
That's very cool. And real quick, so the Real Cook in Malibu, I've been there several times. Amazing food. Do you have a favorite that you would recommend people try their first time?
Oh, I think if you could buy plantain anywhere, and plantain's pretty tricky. It's a hardy banana, but it grows in 10 months. It produces 20 seedlings around the tree. So you can imagine a crop, 10 months to harvest, 20 seedlings. We make amazing pancakes called the macho pancake out of plantain. And we make everything from the green plantain to the pure. We were very, very lucky that you, Kelsey, and every woman in the world fell in love with coconut oil, because the oil produced the pulp, and the pulp allowed us to create an organic flour in Sri Lanka and the Philippines, land that at half the price of grain-free. So, but yeah, anything related to grain and gluten and dairy-free, refined sugar-free, corn-free, soy-free, gum-free, just super clean. Try and cook too with avocado oil or coconut oil. The oils will also make you feel bad if you're using bad oils. So those are the things that we have in our conscious kitchens. Macho pancakes. Once you've had them, you'll make them every day. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And then Jeff, somebody asked a question earlier. How long will it be before we will no longer have synthetic in clothing and dyes?
Oh, well, I wish next week, but the reality of that is it's a large system, and we're up against these chemical companies like DuPont, et cetera, that developed these fabrications a long time ago. So you could imagine everyone's holding on to that old system, and they're petroleum based, et cetera. So you're dealing with not only fashion companies, fast fashion companies that make a lot of money in this, but chemical companies. So they have a lot of publicists, a lot of money to kind of curtail what we're trying to do, and just give people a general education so they have an educated choice when it comes to buying goods. And so, yeah, I hope one day that, somebody will be walking down the street, it's like, I can't believe they're wearing polyester. But until then, it's half education and it's half addiction. We're just addicted to cheap price points, unfortunately. We've been buying t-shirts for the same price since the 70s. So it's like, but everything else has gone up, gas, food, etc. So it's getting people aware enough to know, like, hey, there's something off here. And it's just like, with Charlie and the food, it's like, what is in the ingredients of this? So that's what, hopefully the shift will happen sooner or later. But, we had a documentary that went out and won an Emmy, and so it got a lot of eyes on it. So there's more awareness pieces taking place. And so I'm hope it'll be more in the general conversations from now on. So who knows, but hopefully 5 to 10 years, I hope.
Yeah, and for those that want to watch Jeff's Emmy-winning documentary, the last time I checked it was on Amazon still, but it's absolutely beautiful, and I highly recommend it. And then I think we have time for one or two last questions. But Harry, how can people attend your event, your one-man show?
Well, if you're in Delaware, it's going to be the Delaware Theater Center, which is right there in downtown. But so yeah, that's where it's going to be. Now, we might go to New York. Last year, the play that I did in Delaware went to 59 East 59th Street in New York, an off-Broadway house. And it may go there in the fall. That's all I can say. Don't know yet.
Very cool. So we have less than a minute left. Just quick round. Anything else that you guys to add on encouraging people? Any tips or advice for living an easy way to be sustainable? Harry? Meditation. Great. Jeff?
I would say definitely just do thorough research on anything you purchase for yourself, for your house, for your friends. Just take that extra time.
Amazing. Charlie?
As Harry said, connect in with oneself and then move out of the ignorance and recognize that we can do these things and not be attached to, as Jeff said, the price points, because the more that we shift, the more that the supply will be needed, and then we'll be able to create the right price points. Don't be baited to believe things that are not real. we're baited to believe the water costs more than electricity, right? I mean, more than gasoline. Water is free. It's the bottle, it's how you move it that doesn't. So just keep asking questions and help shift the planet, you know? And by doing it, by the way, the more that you give, the more you understand how to receive. And receiving is really extraordinary, to move out of fearing the past and fearing the future and holding on to the past, and just being very present. As Harry said, meditation brings you into a very present, silent place. And then the answers become a little bit clearer.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff, Charlie, and Harry. And don't forget, you can check out the links below to go see what they're doing, support them, buy their products, and have a great Scott Week.